Teaching in the country is like teaching in a whole other world. Okay, today's video is just going to be unscripted, unprepared, unedited. We've got the flu going on in my house. We've got conjunctivitis going on at the moment. Hubby's sick, so I'm looking a bit messy today as well. So I'm just doing a quick one about teaching in the country. I've had lots of people ask me what it's like to teach in the country and the differences. So today I'm just going to go through my experience of teaching in the country. Obviously, one country school isn't the same as another country school, and even my experience being in that setting would be different to someone else's experience. However, I can say that a lot of the time when I go to professional development and run into other people that have been in similar settings or even in the similar region, have a giggle about a lot of the similarities that we find in country schools, especially in remote New South Wales areas, because we're all in the same system in the department. So my experience has always been from Southwest Sydney. I went to big schools myself, and I started teaching in the mainstream in big schools as well. And then I got my appointment to a small country setting, a small central school. The whole school was smaller than my year 7 grade. There were about 300 kids in my year 7 grade, and the central school that I went to had, I think it was about 250 kids total, K to 12. So that was a big shock to the system. And the school is very unique. They were on 2 separate campuses. So there was the primary campus on one block of land, and then a couple of blocks away from that was the central school. So the town had a bit of a view of that it was the primary school and the high school, even though they were in fact one school. The town, though, was only about 1,000 people total, and it was very small, very closed in, and then on the outsides of it were farmland. So some of the kids coming into the school would travel half an hour just to get to the end of their farm, and then they would travel another 40 minutes or an hour just to get to school. So they were up at 5 a.m. some mornings feeding the farm animals, and then traveling to school on top of that on the bus for quite a while. And some of those roads were full-on dirt country roads. So these were country kids, and I hadn't worked with country kids before. I hadn't grown up around country kids. I had the idea when I went out there that I was a bit of a country girl. You know, I like animals. I like being outdoors. I'm not a country girl. Oh my God, I found out the hard way. I'm not a country girl. I'm definitely a city girl. Country life is beautiful, sweet, quiet, serene, and can be blissful, but there's not much to do. So any little town event that comes up turns into a big event. And the big event of the year in this town involved running sheep through town wearing red socks on their feet. I'm really not kidding. If you look up Festival of the Fleeces, the sheep run through town wearing red socks. And I thought people were pulling my leg that first year. I thought they were lying to me just to have the city girl on. Nope, it was real. And we marched behind the sheep as well as part of the school. But it was fun, and it's great to see the kids having fun and learning about the history of the town as well. When we moved to the town, though, the sheer size of the land overwhelmed me. The fact that from my front porch, I could see the weather coming from 2 hours away. And the weather really dictated a lot of what happened in town. If there was a lot of rain and roads were flooded, half the kids couldn't come to town because the buses couldn't get to them, or they couldn't get off the farm because things would be flooded. And there were many days when that happened. Obviously, especially around, you know, that time of year when, you know, you get summer storms, and there's lots of different things happening with animals being born. Spring, there would be kids tired from being up all night waiting for animals to be born, and then they'd come and tell you about it the next day at school in detail. So I wasn't prepared for that, for them to come to school and talk about things like that. Definitely an eye-opening experience. The fact that kids were just really one with nature, if that's the way to put it. They're comfortable around any animal. You'd get kangaroos on the sports fields, the back oval. We had an echidna come through the school once. Any lizard or frog or goanna or whatever, they just pick it up and play with it. They'd literally forage for food in the plants on our playground, there was a mulberry bush there that the kids were constantly picking and eating. So they'd come back to class with purple fingers all the time. Always taking their shoes off. Country kids love to take their shoes off. They think that they kick the footy better without their shoes on. So it wouldn't be strange to hear me on playground duty telling kids to keep putting their shoes back on. That was definitely something I wouldn't have found in the metro schools that I had taught at. A lot of those kids, they want to keep their shoes on. They didn't want to get their feet dirty. These kids could run through any kind of bindi. And there are horrible bindis out there in the bush as well. These 3-pronged things that would follow you around on any bit of cloth that you could get. And they would hurt. And these kids are just running straight through them, kicking a footy around, just doing what they do. In terms of being part of that community, the community there's like a family. Everyone knows each other, or they're related to each other, or they've got generations going back in there. So my kids were little when we moved there. They were only little toddlers. So they grew up around this environment and pretty much have developed no sense of stranger danger, but there's no strangers in town. So anytime you go down to the pools or to the footy fields or even down to the shops, everyone's there. Everyone knows everyone, which I guess as a teacher, at first you kind of, get into that space of, oh, I just want to break from my job. I don't want to be around everyone that I see every single day or these kids that I see every single day. But after a while you get used to it, and it's really nice. It's nice to go and see kids in their element, doing their own thing and being really happy. And then how wonderfully compassionate and caring and sharing they are just being part of that town unit. So we would go to the pools for a swim, and someone would take their noodle and everyone would share it, or someone would have a handball and they'd all play this game where they would throw the tennis ball up onto the shade cloth and then wait for it to roll down and then catch it. I think that was just a game that they played in that town. I hadn't seen it anywhere before. It was really sweet. It was like the town thing to do. And my kids being part of that as well. And then you'd see the kids at school the other day, and then you'd be able to relate things to the things you could see in town. So you'd talk to kids about force and motion and gravity and talk about how they throw the ball up onto the shade sails and how it would roll down and all the scientific terms that go with it. I'm probably not talking in any particular order at the moment. I'm just thinking of these memories as they come to me. I mentioned before about town events. It also meant that I got to go and see and support my students in those things that they do. So the footy was always a big thing. Oh my God, the food at country events, the town country events. Wow. If you've got any country town, which most do, that have the CWA, the Country Women's Association, best scones, best lamingtons, any cakes that you've got there. And they don't just do the sausage sizzle lunches at these places. They do full on beef and pork rolls with gravy. These are full on properly cooked, like all weekend. These are roasted and homemade gravy, and these rolls, and they're cheap and you just want to eat tons of them. So you go to the footy, support the kids that you've got at school, cheer them on, and then smash your face into these awesome rolls. Great food. And same with any of the markets that we had too. So once a month we had the market stalls, and you'd go down and there'd be people with, cupcakes and more of these rolls and the coffee, and everything was always homemade. Everyone there knew how to make awesome cakes and food and dishes, and they would always be there to, sell or help or raise money. They'd always band together and do different things. There was always lots of fundraising, which, gave you a really good sense of unity. I'm not sure that I have ever felt that in the biggest schools that I've been to. There's always been that great sense of unity within the school, but it didn't really extend, I suppose, as much as what you would get in this town, the country town feel. It also means, though, that, if everyone's close like that and everyone's like a family, that people don't always get along, or they bicker, or they hold grudges, or, people talk, gossip tends to run around, and that's something you can't control. That's out of your control. And once you learn to sort of ignore it, it's not a bad thing, though. It means that sometimes other people will find out about things before you. So there were times where the kids would go home from school and tell their parents that something had happened, and then they'd make 5 phone calls, and then suddenly someone would call the school, and you'd find out, 30 minutes after school had ended that something had happened from someone who's not even related to them or lives anywhere near them. But again, that just comes down to management and leadership and how you handle things within the community. Going down to the RSL, and seeing families down at the RSL was interesting, and the different events that go on. But ultimately, teaching in a country school, in terms of the kids are beautiful. Every kid's got their own needs, like any school that you go to. Being in the country, I found, was difficult to teach in terms of resources and technology. NBN wasn't there while I was there, so computers were a bit older and a bit slower, and you couldn't really get all the kids to log on in the library all at one time because the system would crash, so you'd have to take your turns doing that. We only just got iPads in there as we were in there, so that was definitely new. Not all of the kids have a computer at home, let alone the internet. So a lot of them had to go to the town library to be able to access the internet or use a computer to type up a resume or a letter or do a project or something like that. There were laptops and things that we had, but we had to work hard to maintain them and try and keep up with technology out there. We had the same curriculum, obviously, as everyone else, and try and teach that as best as we can in small classrooms, though, small old classrooms, still the original ones, which is very homely and feels really nice to have that sense of history inside your school. But in terms of keeping up to date with things, it could make things a bit difficult in terms of size and how many kids are coming in, especially if you're getting new families to the town. If a new family comes to town, everyone knows about it, but then it means that if there's a lot of other families that come in all at the same time, things get stretched. When we moved out there were literally only 2 houses available for rent when we moved. And there was a lot of coal mining nearby, so if one of the mines had shut, a lot of houses open up. Just depends on the luck of the draw out there, which is unfortunate. It can be hard out there for people to find work. And you get a lot of people talking about things like how bad coal mines are, but in those communities, those coal mines are essential for work for some people. So it can leave you feeling a bit divided and open up your eyes to certain things, like pigging. The kids have their pigging at such a young age. I could never have imagined, as me being a bit of a helicopter parent here in Sydney, letting my child go out and kill an animal. But they do, and they teach their kids about safety and doing it properly and the reasons for doing it, that you're not out there doing it for sport and for fun and for the glory of, killing an animal. Out there, it's a service, because if you don't keep the wildlife down, the menacing wildlife down, it's bad for your farm. It's harmful to your farm. It can ruin your livestock. It can damage property. And there's different reasons that you do it out there. But yeah, I think kids before kindergarten are out there pigging, learning to go pigging, which means that there's lots of pigging dogs around as well. They love their dogs. Lots of dogs around out there. And animals just kind of everywhere. 2 doors down from us, we had horses. And then as you walked to my school, which was a block away from where I lived, you'd see sheep, goats, all sorts of things on the way there, and that was just what people had nearby. That they weren't even the farms, they were just the houses that were nearby. One had a pony in its backyard, which was really cool, which was definitely different to living in Sydney. But that's what the kids grow up with, which is why they're so comfy with their environment, their nature around them. We had the local river, which was a nice place to go, that had the local carp muster. That was always interesting too. It was definitely a good experience in terms of being a leader. It was a great place to learn to be a leader, because I got to really be involved with the community, with the kids, with the parents, and with the staff there. I am absolutely passionately grateful for the fact that I got to be in a central school setting. It really opened up my eyes to what secondary teachers do, and the skills that they have, and the passion that they have for what they do, and the things that prevent them sometimes from doing their job well, the same way primary teachers have things that, can be a hindrance and get in their way. It was definitely great to be able to meet people that had also gone from metro areas and come to the country, and be able to build those relationships together in an area that was new and sometimes a bit scary, doing something different like that. It was interesting working in an environment where the people that I was working with all went to that school. and their parents went to that school, and then their kids were going to that school. Generations out there. Historically, the school, I think, was over 175 years old. So we had one grandparents' day where there were 4 or 5 generations in one family there for a school photo, which was amazing to see just the history that was embedded in the school there, and the lives that it had touched there, and how everyone was connected that way, which was really, really cool. And I'm sure that happens too in metro settings too, but I've never seen it to that extent that I got to see it in the country. I would definitely recommend teaching in the country if you could. We knew we couldn't stay forever. Our own family circumstances meant that we needed to be in a metro environment so that, you know, our kids could have access to things like speech therapy and occupational therapy, which are hard to get out there, which means as a teacher, if you've got any of those kids with high support needs, their families are really struggling out there, sometimes accessing support services. So you do the best that you can to support them. And, you know, if it means going somewhere to get therapy, sometimes it means traveling an hour or 2 hours to do it. We had to travel an hour just to do our groceries at a Woolworths. We had a little local IGA, but, you know, if you want to do a nice big shop, you needed to travel an hour to get to the nearest Woolworths. We did have a very small hospital in town. If the doctor was out of town, though, that was it. No doctor in town. You've got to travel an hour or 2 hours to get to the nearest hospital. There was a helicopter pad there for emergencies, and when that helicopter came into town, everyone could hear it because the town wasn't that big. And every morning, everyone would be up trying to check on each other and make sure that everyone was okay, and you know, see if you needed help. People out in the country, they'll give you the clothes off their own backs if you need it. I remember one time we had run out of firewood, and we said we wouldn't be able to get firewood until the next pay cycle. And next thing we knew, there was a load of firewood on our front lawn the next morning from the townspeople, because there's no way they'd let you go cold if they knew they had firewood out the back. We didn't ask for any firewood. We didn't say anything. They just do it because they can. If someone put it out there that they've got to put up a fence, you know, the next weekend, you know, 3 people are jumping up going, how can I help you? I'll come and help you. I'll come help you put up your fence. Amazing sense of community when it came to that. And it was always very enlightening to see that kind of Australian hard yakka mateship hasn't died, that it's definitely there still in some of those communities. And that's not to say that we don't have it in metro. Of course we help each other in these metro areas in Sydney. We always do that, but just it's a different sense of it when you're in that country setting. It's almost like a little bubble that they live in, and they've got their own connections and passions and interests out there that are definitely different, but absolutely worthwhile doing. If you're ever considering going to the country, I highly recommend giving it a go, at least being open to it, researching the place that you go to before you go, to make sure it's got things that you know you might be keen on doing or be interested in doing, and go with the mindset that all of our kids have all different needs regardless of where they're from or what they do or what size town they live in. But be open to all of the different things that are there, and just embrace those changes if you've got the opportunity to do it. It's not for everyone, definitely isn't for everyone. I would be more than happy to go back and teach country again once my own children are grown up and doing their own thing. It's just not for us right now, but I'm definitely glad that I did it, and would be happy to answer any questions anyone has about teaching in the country, or if you've taught in the country and you had your own similar or different experiences, I'd love to hear about it. Pop things in the comments below. Thank you to anyone who's new, who's joined the video to have a watch today. I've kind of rambled on a bit longer than I normally do. Just an interesting one today about me teaching in the country. So if you haven't subscribed, I'll chuck the link down the bottom here. And if you haven't seen any of my other videos, I'll put one up here in case you want to watch. Thanks to everyone who's been supporting me. Again, I've been receiving more messages, and I've been getting recognised at other schools and events that I go to now, which is a bit weird when people come up and say, I see you on YouTube. It's lovely though. Don't ever be afraid to come and say hello. I love to hear what other people are doing and what you like about what you're doing in schools and what you're excited about. I love to hear it. So hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.